Hello, and welcome to Chagpar MD. I'm Dr. Anise Chagpar. As you know, this channel is dedicated to providing you evidence-based data to help inform your health and wellness decisions. Now, some of you have asked me, how much exercise do you really need? It seems that in so many of these videos, we talk about the merits of exercise and the benefits of it, but how much do you really need? How intense should that be? What does moderate to vigorous intensity really mean? Should you be doing more cardio or more strength training? And do the recommendations vary based on age or other comorbidities like cancer or pregnancy or being a senior citizen? Well, I hope that this video will answer all of your questions. So what do you say? Let's get started. Now, it seems that in almost every video, we talk about exercise being really something that is very important for your overall health and wellness. And there is a plethora of data to support the evidence-based merits of adding exercise into your routine. Indeed, we now talk about sitting as being the new smoking. But is it really only a lack of inactivity that's beneficial? Or do we really need to step it up a bit? Yes, pun intended. Well, let's dig into the data. Clearly, exercise has been shown to be of benefit in a variety of ways, from lowering your risk of diabetes to cancer, controlling blood pressure, helping you to stay at a healthy body weight, boosting mood, sharpening mental focus, improving sleep, reducing stress, and so much more. And we know that sitting or inactivity really has been found to be detrimental. But how much do you really need? Like, is a 5-minute walk a day good enough? Well, there are a variety of guidelines, and I've left you the link here for the current US guidelines, but they're the same for the NHS in the UK or for the Canadian health system. In terms of how much activity you need as an adult, we recommend at least 150 minutes of moderate to vigorous aerobic activity and at least 2 days of muscle strengthening activity per week. But what does that mean? What is moderate to intensity aerobic activity, and what constitutes muscle strengthening activities? Well, in terms of moderate to vigorous aerobic activity, we're really talking here about cardio. And so how do you know whether you're working in that moderate to vigorous activity level? Well, this goes based on what's called METs, or metabolic equivalent times. So moderate activity is 3 to 6 METs, and vigorous activity is more than 6 METs. But how do you know what that is? So there are a few simple tests that you can ask yourself as you exercise that can kind of gauge for you where you're at. The talk test is one that many people have used, where if you're breathing hard, but you can still have a conversation, you're probably working at a moderate effort. Vigorous activity is where you can only get a few words out before you need to gasp for your next breath. Your heart rate is noticeably increased with moderate activity, but significantly increased with vigorous activity. And you can kind of gauge your own effort as well. So some examples: brisk walking, dancing. These things are considered moderate activity. When you step it up a bit, running, fast cycling, especially up a hill, now you're talking about vigorous activity. So you want to try to get about 150 minutes a week of moderate to vigorous activity. Now you may be asking, what exactly is a MET? Metabolic equivalent is really the idea of working metabolic rate relative to your resting metabolic rate. So think about it this way. 1 MET is the energy cost of sitting quietly. Yes, because even when you're sitting quietly, you are expending energy. But that energy is about 1 kilocalorie per kilogram per hour. Now, if you stand up, for example, you can double that rate. But If you start walking, you increase that even more. And start running, yep, even more. And so these METs are really in terms of multiples of what the energy cost is of sitting quietly. So what about steps? So many people talk about getting 10,000 steps a day. Does that count? Is that in addition to or instead of your 150 minutes a week? Well, if you look at the guidelines really talk about this being this 150 minutes per week. But if you think about the 10,000 steps, depending on your pace, this can factor into that. So for example, if you walk at a brisk pace, getting 10,000 steps in per day may make it roughly 30 minutes on top of what would be considered your usual activity. And so that may count towards that 150 minutes. The nice thing about steps, however, is that it does provide some motivation for people to get moving. And whether you use a pedometer or you use a Fitbit or a Garmin, or whether you simply just take out your cell phone and use one of the many free apps that are available, really looking at your step count can give you a little pat on the back when you see that you're doing better than you did before. Oftentimes people will say, you know what? Just see where you're at right now. Measure your baseline count. How many steps do you get a day? And then set an objective. Maybe you want to increase that by 10%. So if you're normally doing 5,000 steps a day, try to add an extra 500. Soon enough, you'll be at 10,000. And remember, 10,000 is not a maximum. It's just a recommendation. But you still need to think about how you're going to walk, because you want to get your heart rate up into that moderate to vigorous activity level so that you really get the health benefits of exercise. Now, does duration matter? In other words, do you have to do a long stretch at a time? And the answer is no. You can get your 150 minutes in smaller increments. And in fact, people have found the same health benefits, whether you do 30 minutes a day at one stretch, or whether you do 3 10-minute brisk walks in a day. Those are equivalent, so long as you get your 150 minutes in. Now, what about something called NEAT, non-exercise activity thermogenesis? This is where you're burning calories through activity that is not deemed to be, quote, exercise. So, for example, you may choose to take the stairs instead of the elevator. You may park further away from the door. You may walk to work, incorporating activity into your daily life instead of inactivity. Now, these swaps may not increase your heart rate. And remember, you have to really increase your heart rate into that moderate to vigorous activity zone to really get it to count for that 150 minutes. But anything that you can do that will increase your calorie output is really going to be beneficial to you, especially if you want to maintain a healthy weight and or if you're a little overweight like most of us are currently. Now remember, the cardio is only part of the equation. In order to meet those guidelines and to get maximum health benefits, you also need to think about strength training, building muscle. And you need to do this at least twice per week. So what does that mean? If I lift one barbell once, twice a week, is that good enough? Well, not quite. There's a few little caveats here that you need to consider. These strength trainings must target all of your major muscle groups. So legs, hips, back, chest, abdomen, shoulders, arms. And you want to really work to the point where it's hard to do another rep without help. So you want to try to do 8 to 12 reps per set and maybe do 2 or 3 sets until you really can't lift anymore. That is getting to the point of muscle fatigue. And the idea behind muscle fatigue is that you really exhaust your muscle so that then it has a chance to recover and grow even stronger. How do you do this? Does it have to be lifting weights? And the answer is no. You can use resistance bands. You can even use body weight. And there are a number of free videos that you can get on YouTube to download where you can really explore how you can get this strength training in. Remember too that there are a variety of ways of doing this. So you could do a whole body workout on alternate days. Remember always, you want to give that muscle group that you work rest for at least 24 hours before you work it again. So you could do a whole body workout, say on Monday, take a few days rest, get a whole body workout on Thursday, and you've got your 2 times per week done. Or you could choose to work different muscle groups on different days. So for example, you may work legs on Monday, arms on Tuesday, and so on. Now, what about other populations? Are the recommendations different based on age or other factors? Well, the answer is yes and no. So for our youth, people who are between the ages of 6 and 17, the guidelines are actually different. And for this group, the recommendations are for 60 minutes of moderate to vigorous physical activity every day. Yep, every day. So those kids need to get more activity in than we do. And most of these should be vigorous at least on 3 days a week. You also want to build in muscle strengthening for them at least 3 days per week, and bone strengthening at least 3 days per week. So what's bone strengthening? That's really high impact. So running and jumping and that kind of thing, which counts towards your 60 minutes a day as well. What about in older adults or patients who are pregnant or cancer survivors? Well, the answer is that for all of those groups, the recommendations are the same as for adults. Now, I'm leaving you a link here and in the description box below that gives you a whole guide as to how you might need to tailor your activities in these special groups. But really, the recommendations for 150 minutes a week and 2 strength training sessions still stand. And as we talked about in another video, which I will link here, we found that exercise for cancer survivors is really important in reducing recurrence risk and improving overall quality of life. So it's important that you really get that exercise in. What about for weight loss? Now, as we've talked about in other videos, weight loss is really a simple equation: calories in, calories out. And by increasing your exercise, you increase that calories out portion. How do you calculate how many calories you need to consume and how many calories you need to expend? Well, it's a simple equation of looking at your total daily energy expenditure, which is really your basal metabolic rate times an activity factor. So how active are you regularly times your basal metabolic rate gives you your TDEE. You simply reduce that by about 15 to 20% to get your net daily calories. Now, for those net daily calories, again, you want to increase your calorie output over your calorie input so that you can accomplish a calorie deficit. I will leave you a link here as well to a video where we do go through the whole equation of how to work this out in case you missed it the last time. So in closing, exercise is so important. And I hope all of you are meeting the guidelines, getting your 150 minutes of moderate to vigorous activity in every week, and a couple of muscle training, strength training sessions as well. This is so critical. It is good for your brain health. It is good for your heart health. It is good for your overall body health as well as your emotional well-being. I hope this video has inspired you to really take activity to the next level. I hope you'll like and share this video, and I hope you'll subscribe. Remember, it doesn't cost you anything to subscribe, but it does cost you in terms of your health not to be an informed consumer of knowing the evidence behind your health and wellness. Until next time, I'm Dr. Anise Chagpar, wishing you all a safe and healthy week.